Guards on side. Okay. Assume the grim position.
You ready, sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. I will bring to order the meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee of Tarrant County College District. The members of the committee that are present are myself, I'm Bill Greenhill, Trustee Gwen Morrison, and Trustee Leonard Hornsby. I will bring this meeting to order. As I said, the purpose of this meeting is to review and deliberate the proposed annual audited financial report for the district's fiscal year ending August 31, 2021. Weaver and Tidwell is the district's independent accounting firm which prepared the report. Weaver and Tidwell's representatives are here and to present the report, and they will introduce themselves when they start the report. After the summary and discussion of the report, I will entertain a motion regarding the committee's recommendations that it be received or accepted by the Board of Trustees at its next regular meeting on December 16th. So please, gentlemen, introduce yourselves, and we'll proceed to hear the proposed annual report.
All right, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Dallas Duggar. I'm an audit partner with Weaver. I have with me Dewey Nyo. He served as the engagement manager for the audit this year. Very happy to be here and have worked with the team this year. As you all may know, Weaver's worked with the college for many years, but I did rotate on as partner for this year. Mr. James Fitz was the partner for the past few years, and I moved on to the engagement this year. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, I spend the majority of my time working with institutions of higher education, governmental, and nonprofit. Weaver as a whole is heavily invested in our governmental practice with a specific focus on higher education. So very excited to have this continued relationship with the college and work with your group here. So we're here to deliver the results of the audit for fiscal year 2020. Yes,
Will you
sir.
please, before you start, tell us why there's a change in the in your positions here because of the independence and so forth and so on, so the public, if they're listening, can know why.
Yes, so the audit was put up for rebid for this year, and for one, it's always good to have a new set of eyes from just not only an independence perspective, but just having different perspectives. I was recently promoted to partner this year, and I'm taking the reins on the higher education practice for the firm, so they thought that I would be a good fit to step into this role. But it's always good practice every few years to look at, change out the engagement team, change out the partner, to get that fresh perspective, and we thought that would be a good benefit to the college for this year's audit.
Also, from time to time, do change the engagement partner and so forth as well. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's correct.
So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Please proceed.
Well, and Mr. Greenhill, I'll add one other thing, that when we rebid the contract this year, we now have contractual language that requires at least every 5 years that we change.
At least every
yes.
5 years.
Yes,
okay.
sir, to match best practices at GFOA.
Yes.
It's a good practice.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we do have a presentation here to go through. Feel free to interject with any questions at any given time. After going through the presentation, I do have a few pieces of the report that I want to go through, some financial highlights that I think might be relevant that you might want to know about. So going into the presentation, we already introduced ourselves. I did mention that Weaver is focused on our governmental practice with a specific higher education focus. We do have professionals that regularly attend conferences. We're very active in relevant groups, TACBO, TASBO, GFOA, and the CPA Society. We serve as guest lecturers in the various higher ed universities throughout the area. And we have several members that serve on the GFOA committee, so they're reviewing CAFRs, reviewing reports just like yours to see if they're in compliance with applicable reporting standards. So going into our audit process, we have here the audit cycle. We have some dates on here, but we do highly encourage the audit to be a year-round continuous process. We encourage our clients, including you all, to reach out to us during the year if material transactions occur or if you have any questions. Your team is really good about doing that. It helps the audit process because come time for us to come out here, we've already hopefully vetted and dealt with the material or complex issues that have occurred during the year. And vice versa, if we become aware of different pronouncements or changes that could impact your operations or your financial statements, we try and be proactive about reaching out with putting together a game plan to make sure there's enough time and resources to be able to address the new changes.
For
yes,
your information, you probably know this, that a member of your team did call me as the chair of this
Yes,
this committee to ask some pretty good questions, or very good questions. I
Yes,
just want
sir.
to let you know that.
absolutely, and that is required
part of
as
your-
part of our fraud
Yeah.
considerations that we talk to people in charge of governance,
Yep.
including yourself this year, to see if you have any specific concerns or obviously if you're aware of anything that we should be aware of going into the audit process. So I
Yep.
appreciate you bringing that up. So we did start our actual on-site testing in the summer of this year, where we came out and we gained an understanding of your internal controls, any changes from prior years. We do test those internal controls. And then we also perform a single audit. So federal single audit and a state single audit. Organizations and governments that receive funding over a certain threshold have to get a single audit. And for federal governments, that's $750,000. You all are well in excess of that. So for the federal single audit this year, we had two major programs that were selected for testing. One being the Student Financial Aid Program, which we generally test each year, it's so big. And the other being the HERF Fund, the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, which was part of the CARES Act. We did test that this year as well. That was identified by the federal government as a high-risk program, and we will have to continue to test that each year in which material funds are expended. And then we also tested the Texas Equalization Opportunity Grant, TOG grant, as part of the state single audit. And then we come back in the fall in October, November to complete our testing, not only of that testing that we began in the summer, but your ending 8/31 material balances and transactions that have occurred during the year. And then we also assist management with the preparation of the financial report. All in anticipation of being able to present, deliver, and issue the report in December. So going forward, our audits are conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. And we also perform them in accordance with generally accepted government auditing standards as required by the federal and state single audits that we do. I mentioned the single audit. We also test compliance, not only compliance with the grants that are specific to the single audits we're performing, but also the Public Funds Investment Act. We take a risk-based approach, as we do on all of our audits, and we go through your financial statements looking at those areas that are susceptible to be materially misstated. Either they're complex or they're large and material. And we also look at your grants to see those compliance requirements that are complex, material, and applicable, and do testing and focus our testing and our efforts on testing those areas. We test internal controls over financial reporting, and we test over internal controls over compliance for your major state and federal programs that we select. We test compliance, and then our audit plan ultimately is to provide reasonable assurance as to whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement and free of material compliance errors.
You, of course, had access to our internal auditor during all this period of time.
We do. We make inquiries. We get their reports. We don't utilize them as part
No,
of
of
our
course
effort,
not,
but
but,
we definitely meet with them to see if there's anything that they've identified as a finding or a risk during the year that we need to be aware of. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Sure. So on this next page is an overview of the report. I will mention previously this was referred to as a CAFR. They did change the acronym a little bit, and it's now an annual comprehensive financial report. So the basis of what makes it up is all the same, but the report name did change a little bit. So I did want to point that out.
Whose change was that?
The term CAFR was deemed to be a derogatory term in certain cultures. So
So this is an industry change?
yeah, yes, ma'am. The GASB, the oversight board for the applicable accounting requirements, made this change for this year.
And it's
That's
a
right.
what? Say it again for me.
GASB, Governmental
No,
Accounting.
I mean,
So
annual C,
Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
okay.
So they haven't thought of a way to say that succinctly like CAFR, so we're just calling it annual report now going forward. So here we have
Welcome.
What
the
was the other term?
the
That this term replaced?
CAFR was the previous acronym that we used to refer to the report. Yes, ma'am. So here we have the different sections of the report. The first is the introductory section, which includes the transmittal letter. That section is not audited by us, but any of these areas that I'll go through that say unaudited, we don't audit this section, but we do ensure that the pieces that we do audit are in agreement with the numbers that are noted within those areas. So we ensure that they agree in relation to what we are auditing. We have our independent auditor's report that covers the financial statements, where we provide an opinion as to whether or not the financials are free of material misstatement. Next is management's discussion and analysis. That is prepared by management, and it is very useful in going through to determine the explanations of significant changes year over year in asset balances, liability balances, revenues, and expenses. Next are the financial statements, including the footnotes. And then from there is required supplementary information that's required by GASB to be presented, mainly as it relates to the college's proportionate share of pension, which is the Texas retirement system plan that's managed by the state, but the district has to record certain entries related to their share of the funding and the obligation of that plan, as well as the employee retirement system, the OPEB plan. The required supplementary information covers various data and information related to those two items.
Since we have a new member, just to make sure that we're clear, so the Texas retirement system covers the retirement plan for employees. The employees' retirement system covers our health care benefit.
Yes.
So often organizations are under, one of those and not both, but we're split. And so I just want to make sure you understood when he talks about other post-employment benefits, it's health care under the ERS.
Yeah. And I will mention too that the financial impact, the entries that are recorded in the disclosures that you'll see in the footnotes, note 8, note 9, all of the information that's needed to record entries and present the disclosures, all of that information is provided by the state, and then management takes that and records the necessary entries. So the assumptions and everything that goes into those numbers, which it's pretty complex, actuarial tables, investment returns, and projections. All of that information is provided to you all by the state.
For my colleagues' information, those of us who are not number people with financial statements, the notes and the management discussion and analysis is where you really get the information that you can digest.
That's
better.
right.
If you're not a numbers person.
It provides
I just
more.
wanted to bring that.
Yes, more useful commentary than we're able to provide.
Well,
and what we're providing
yeah,
with
I'm
them
just
beyond.
saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good point. After that, there's a supplementary data section. This relates to various schedules required by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. From there, statistical section. This is a GASB requirement, various information that has to be presented. There's actually 10 years worth of information as applicable within that section, so a lot of good comparative analysis. And then the last two sections that relate to the single audits that we perform over the federal and state testing that we did. So I do have a couple of schedules that I'll point out in the CAFR after going through the presentation, but at a high level, I did want to provide some results that are presented within the report. So first, we have total assets. 2021, as of August 31st, 2021, total assets totaled $1.73 billion, which is roughly a 4% increase in total assets reported at the end of the prior year. A few factors impacted that. One, there's now a large increase to federal grants receivable, which relates to the HERF, the CARES Act funding, and the timing of the receivable and revenue that was recorded from that. And also investment growth and performance impacted those total assets going up for the year. Net position was roughly 7% higher at the end of the year. Net position being your assets less your liabilities. was at $1.147 billion at the end of 2021 and $1.073 billion at the end of 2020. I'll get on the next slide. I'll show you what the increase in net position was, but there were a few factors that impacted that number. The first being the HERF grant. There was a net $50 million increase in revenue that was recognized from HERF in 2021 compared to 2020. I think it was 66 compared to 16. So that obviously drove your net position number up quite a bit. Salary costs were down about $8 million due to headcount changes. And then there were other cost reductions, travel, and related costs from employees working from home that reduced costs compared to prior year in various other categories as well. So all of that being said, there was a net 7% increase in your net position number at the end of the year compared to prior year. Total revenue, both operating and non-operating, was at $502 million for the fiscal year in 2021. That's a 3% increase. The primary impact of that increase is the HERF grant revenue. I know I'm going to say that quite a bit, but that had such a significant influence on your financial statement results for this year. That was offset by the amounts that were applied to student accounts. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail when we go through the report. And then the increase in that position for 2021, the net revenues over expenses was at roughly $75 million for the fiscal year 2021 compared to $55 million in 2020 because of the reasons I already gave. HERF funding, decreased salary costs, and decreased travel and other costs related to employees working from home. So we do want to go through the results of the audit. Again, the audit has been substantially completed. We'll be in a position to issue the report after next week's board meeting. So for the financial statements, we anticipate issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on those statements. There were no material adjustments recorded and no material weaknesses in internal control or significant deficiencies in internal control that we would be required to communicate to you all. For our audit of the federal awards, now point out again this included two major programs, the Student Financial Aid Program and the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund Program. There were no compliance findings, no material compliance findings that we'd be required to report, nor any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over compliance. And then for the state award, the Texas Education Opportunity Grant, same thing for that, no material compliance findings and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over compliance. So I will point out here too that the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, the major federal program we have, is very complex. There were 3 different waves and ever-evolving requirements that had to be looked at by management. They did a great job staying on top of that. We tested all of the material components we were required for that grant. And in most cases, from what we're seeing from other schools and other institutions that receive these funds, we are seeing findings just resulting from the complexities in the grant. So it is pretty rare for there not to be any findings specific to that grant. So that just points out to the job that management did in staying on top of it. So on the next slide, we are required to evaluate the significant and key estimates that are made and impact your financial statements. The first 2 here, the proportionate share of net position and OPEB that I mentioned earlier, are key estimates, just given the significance of the impact of the financial statements. Although this information is provided by TRS and ERS to management, who then use those to record the necessary entries for those items.
Does our management and discussion analysis, maybe this is not a material question, a lot of our increase in assets and so forth has been as a result of federal aid. When that goes away, you've decided it's not going to be material, but do Have you read that in the management discussion analysis? Does it, or maybe not?
It does speak to the impact that HERF specifically had for this year, the impact that had to assets and revenue. When that does run its course, obviously, everything else being equal, they would be lower.
Of course,
in
it's
that year.
lower.
Yes, yeah,
It's not materially lower. Okay.
right.
Well, and that is going to be an interesting question when we do our next tranche of debt sale, to make
Okay.
sure that as part of those rating agency presentations that we're very
Yes,
clear
okay,
about if
I
there's a
understand.
decline. Yeah. So but it would be our responsibility to make sure that they understand that there's that sort of extraordinary circumstance that warranted
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So, and then next we have a few various communications which are required to be communicated. One, there were no changes in significant accounting policies during the year. There were no pronouncements, accounting pronouncements and changes that were materially impactful to the college that had to be implemented. Two, there were no material misstatements recorded, no errors that required audit adjustments to be recorded. There are no new disclosures of note. We noted no material irregularities or illegal acts as a result of our audit procedures that we performed. There were no transactions entered into during the year for which there was a lack of authoritative guidance dictating how the transaction needed to be recorded. No difficulties or disagreements arose with management during the course of the audit. We encountered no independence issues, nor were we aware of any consultations or requests from management for a second auditor during the engagement. So, had any of those come up, we would be required to communicate that. And then, in terms of strengths and accomplishment, management was very helpful and responsive during the course of the engagement. This was my first year on the audit. I was very impressed just by being able to hit the ground running on day one. They were very prepared and ready for us, and anytime we had questions or requests, they're very responsive. They take this process very seriously. So hats off to the team for doing that. That makes the process go that much smoother.
Yeah, and can I highlight, I mean, you all know this, but we've got an extraordinarily experienced staff there.
Absolutely.
Ronnie's new, but of course Nancy and Stan and Lindsay, who are all engaged in supporting this process, made it go that smoothly. So we're thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be said too. We do have a point here that's district-wide. We ask questions of other departments as well as part of our testing. And across the board, we receive full cooperation, so we appreciate that. Next, adaptable in the midst of significant changes, emerging provisions, especially as it relates to the ever-changing and new interpretations of the HERF rules that are out there. And then I do especially want to point out the receipt of the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That's something that's provided by the Government Finance Officers Association through a review of that report each year, where a member of that team will review the report, ensure that it's in compliance with applicable requirements, presentation requirements. It goes above and beyond what's required by GASB. And this
Mentioned
was
it
awarded
for the 29th.
for the 29th straight year, yeah. And we are confident that when this year's report is submitted, it'll be
Yeah.
an even 30. So this is something, I'll say again, that we don't see that many consecutive years very often.
Bravo.
So that just speaks to the team that you all have. So I think that might be all I have for the presentation. I did want to highlight a few statements, but I'll go ahead and stop now and see if you all have any questions or anything that you care for me to elaborate on.
I'd just like to say bravo to our financial team.
Yes.
It's again, a very well-done process.
Yep.
Any
Agreed. So I mentioned all of the various areas of the financial report. I believe you all have copies. I'm going to go ahead and just go to page 11, which is the statement of net position. This is the first statement that we're providing assurance on, and it's the commercial equivalent of your balance sheet showing the assets and liabilities of the organization. So a few things to point out here. One, for investments, you'll see that there was a reduction in non-current investments and an increase in current investments during the year, which primarily relates for the non-current investments, those matured, and that caused the short-term investments to be increased. I do know that the district is moving to a managed investment provider. And once those funds are invested, I'd imagine that mix will change a little bit going forward. I mentioned the federal grants and contract receivable had a large increase from $8 million last year to $43 million this year, which relates to a receivable as part of the HERF grant. Capital assets had a large increase. You all had the bond issuance last year, so as those funds are spent towards capital assets, that number will continue to rise. And bonds payable decrease as principal payments start to be made on the debt. And then going forward to page 13 is your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. A few things to point out here. There are several.
What page? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Page 13.
Oh, 13.
Yes, Exhibit 2. So this shows the district's revenues, expenses, and non-operating revenues. There are a few different line items that are impacted by the HERF funding that I want to point out. The first is the tuition and fees line item. You'll see the net number decreased from $46 million to $26 million in the current year. There was a decrease because of decreased enrollment in the year to the gross tuition number. But the biggest driver of that going down is the increase to allowances and discounts. So as awards are received like HERF and they're applied to student accounts, that number has to be shown as a net or a contra to the gross tuition number. So that increase went from 23 million to 37 million in the current year because more HERF funds were available to be awarded, which drove that net number down roughly 20 million from prior year. And now for those awards, if they are paid directly to students as opposed to being applied to their account, that hits the scholarships and fellowships line item within expenses. So that's why you'll see an increase from $56 to $78 million within that line item. So those are the two primary, in addition to federal grant revenue, those are the primary items that are impacted by HERF funding received.
Okay.
Overall, expenses were down quite a bit. And as I mentioned, salaries changed related to changed headcount, and then the few other categories, travel and other expenses directly related to employees work from home, helped impact that change in expenses as well. So those were the few statements I wanted to point out, but if y'all have any questions or want me to walk through any of the other statements, I'd be happy to.
Any questions? I don't. Is that it?
One thing I will add, and I don't know that we've always done it exactly this way, but we're trying to get into a pattern. Tomorrow at the board work session, when I come to the item where you'll take action at the board meeting, I'll invite them up to provide an overview to the full board.
Okay.
Okay, so that they'll get that report and then have a week to digest it before they take action on it as well. I think in the past, there have been occasions where we do it actually at the board meeting.
Yes, you
But
do
this
it
will
at
give
the board
them the
meeting.
opportunity
Okay.
to see it in advance, and so you'll expect that. But he'll cover the same slide deck, and then be available to answer questions
So
as
we
we
can,
distribute this.
okay, so we can all take a look at the numbers and in particular the notes
That's
and
correct.
so forth and so on.
Little late night reading, yes.
Yeah, some interesting reading. Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
I think the tradition is for us to entertain a motion to recommend that the board accept or receive, that we receive, yes, ma'am, the audit report. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Oh,
So moved
well.
That the audit and finance committee received the audit report as presented.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I second.
Will you write that down? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much, and bravo to the financial team. It's, wow, especially during this year.
Yeah.
Are you in the Dallas office, or?
Yes, sir. I'm in the Dallas Fort Worth Zoo, and the rest of our team was in Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, well, that's good.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes.
You're-
Have you worked on our project before?
Yes, I have been on this project for 5 years.
Oh, 5 years.
Okay.
Why don't you move to West 7th Street? You don't need to, you don't need to be in Dallas. Come to the fort.
It is nice out here.
Yeah, well,
you know,
it
every
is.
time I drive out here, I do enjoy being in the
Well,
area.
West 7th
so-
is getting very crowded.
Yes.
There's going to be some new buildings, new hotels.
So you don't
So
have
our-
offices in Dallas and Fort Worth?
We do. Our office is actually on 7th Street,
Right.
I believe. So yeah, I enjoy getting to go out there. But we're in Dallas, Fort Worth, all of the major Texas cities, and then a few outside of the state as well.
All right. If that's it, then this meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all for coming.
So
I'm-
this has
I'm-
been one of those long-term partnerships
Oh, yeah.
going back to
Since
Mr.
since
Weaver.
the beginning.
Is it from the very beginning?
It's from the very beginning.
Mr.
Lawson
Weaver
Eckert was the
himself.
lawyer, and
used to come.
yeah. As I say, I used to do